Ambassador Jake Morrison stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his hands gripping the speaking podium. The massive circular room stretched high above him, filled with representatives from 47 different alien species. Each delegate sat in their specially designed seats, watching him with eyes that ranged from curious to hostile. Jake had been doing this job for 15 years. He had spoken in this chamber hundreds of times before. But today felt different. Today something was about to break. "Honored council members," Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation system. "I present to you humanity's proposal for establishing new trade routes with the species we recently contacted in the Outer Rim sectors." The proposal was simple and fair. Humans had discovered 3 new civilizations in the past year. These young species needed help developing their technology and economy. Humanity wanted to create trade agreements that would benefit everyone involved. Jake had spent months preparing this presentation. The human research teams had worked day and night to create detailed plans. They had calculated fair prices, sustainable development schedules, and cultural exchange programs. Everything was designed to help these new species grow strong while creating profitable relationships for everyone. But as Jake spoke, he watched the council members' faces. Most weren't even listening. Some were having private conversations with their assistants. Others stared at their data tablets, clearly bored. A few seemed actively annoyed that he was speaking at all. Counselor Zethkar, a tall reptilian being with green scales and cold yellow eyes, interrupted Jake mid-sentence. "Ambassador Morrison, we appreciate your presentation, but the Council has concerns about human expansion in that region." Jake paused. "What concerns, Counselor?" "Our proposals include full transparency and Council oversight of all activities." "The concern," Zethkar continued, "is that humans have shown aggressive tendencies in the past. The Council believes it would be better to handle first contact with these species through established procedures." Jake felt his jaw tighten. Aggressive tendencies? "We've been peaceful partners in this Council for over a century. Every human colony follows galactic law. Every trade agreement we've made has been fair and beneficial to all parties." Another council member, a blue-skinned being with 4 arms, spoke up. "The Council has made its decision. This proposal is rejected. Human expansion into the Outer Rim will be suspended pending further review." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Suspended? This wasn't just a rejection. This was a complete halt to human exploration and development. And there had been no discussion, no debate, no consideration of the facts he had presented. "I request a formal debate period," Jake said firmly. "According to Council procedures, any member species has the right to present their case fully before a vote." Zethkar's eyes narrowed. "The Council has already discussed this matter extensively in private sessions." "No further debate is needed? Private sessions?" Jake felt anger building in his chest. The Council was making decisions about humanity without including human representatives. This violated every principle the Council claimed to uphold. Jake looked around the chamber. Not a single Council member met his eyes. They had already decided. They had probably decided weeks ago, maybe months ago. This entire presentation had been a waste of time, a show to make it look like they had considered humanity's position. Dr. Lisa Carter, Jake's scientific advisor, sat in the human observation section. She caught his eye and tapped her datapad urgently. Jake gave her a small nod, understanding her signal. She had found something important. "Very well," Jake said, his voice carefully controlled. "I accept the Council's decision. However, I request a brief recess to consult with my team." Zethkar waved a dismissive hand. 5 minutes. Jake walked quickly to where Lisa waited. She leaned close and whispered, "I cracked their communication network. Jake, you need to see this." She showed him her datapad screen. It displayed intercepted messages between Council members from the past month. Jake's eyes widened as he read. The messages talked about the human problem and discussed ways to limit human influence in the galaxy. One message from Zethkar stated clearly, humans are becoming too independent. They must be controlled before they threaten the established order. Another message discussed plans to gradually reduce human territory by reassigning star systems to other species. They called it rebalancing galactic demographics. Jake scrolled through more messages. The Council had been planning this for years. They saw humanity not as partners but as a threat to their power. Every rejection, every delay, every bureaucratic obstacle humans had faced had been part of a deliberate plan to weaken humanity's position. The worst message was from 3 days ago. A distress call had come from New Sydney, a human colony on the edge of Council space. Raiders were attacking the colony, and the human fleet was too far away to help in time. The Council had the nearest military force, but they voted to monitor the situation instead of sending help. Jake felt sick. 20,000 humans lived on New Sydney. Men, women, and children who depended on the Council's protection, and the Council had chosen to watch them die rather than help them. "Jake," Lisa whispered, "there's more. They're planning to propose new restrictions on human military development next month. They want to limit our fleet size and weapon capabilities." Jake looked up at the Council chamber. These beings had smiled at him for 15 years. They had shaken his hand and called him friend. But behind closed doors, they had been planning humanity's downfall. He walked back to the podium. The chamber fell silent, waiting for his response to their rejection. "Councillor Zethkar," Jake said, his voice carrying a new edge, "I have a question about the distress call from New Sydney 3 days ago." Zethkar's scales darkened slightly. "What about it? Why did the Council vote to monitor instead of assist? Your fleet could have reached them in 6 hours." "The Council determined that local security forces were adequate for the situation." "Local security forces?" Jake's voice rose. "There were no local security forces? The Raiders destroyed the orbital defense platforms in the first hour. You had real-time intelligence showing civilians under direct attack." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some Council members looked uncomfortable. Others seemed annoyed that Jake was questioning their decision. "The Council's decision was final," Zethkar said coldly. Jake stared at him for a long moment. Then he activated his emergency communicator. "Captain Stone, prepare for immediate departure." "Priority Alpha," the chamber erupted in surprised voices. Jake raised his hand for silence. "Members of the Galactic Council," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the noise. "For over a century, humanity has participated in this organization with good faith. We have followed your laws, contributed to your projects, and trusted in your principles of cooperation and mutual assistance." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But trust is a two-way street. And today I have learned that this Council has been systematically working against human interests for years. You have sabotaged our proposals, limited our growth, and refused aid to our people in their time of need." The chamber was now completely silent. Every eye was fixed on Jake. "Therefore, effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from all galactic treaties and agreements. We are ending our membership in this Council. We are recalling all human diplomatic personnel from Council space. And we are terminating all cooperation with Council organizations." The silence stretched for several seconds. Then chaos erupted. Council members jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. Some demanded explanations. Others threatened consequences. Jake stood calmly in the center of the storm. "The decision is final. Good day." He walked out of the chamber, followed by his entire human delegation. Behind him, the Galactic Council dissolved into angry arguments and desperate attempts to understand what had just happened. As Jake boarded his ship, he felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. Humanity was now alone in the galaxy. But for the first time in years, they were truly free. President Helen Brooks sat in the emergency session room deep beneath the Geneva government complex. The room was packed with senators, military leaders, and department heads. Everyone looked worried and tired. The news from the Galactic Council had reached Earth just 6 hours ago, and the government had been in crisis mode ever since. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Brooks began, her voice steady despite the chaos of the day, "Ambassador Morrison's actions have put us in an unprecedented situation. We are now completely cut off from galactic civilization. Senator Paul Turner, head of the Colonial Affairs Committee, leaned forward. Madam President, we have over 200 human colonies in council space. Millions of our people are scattered across 40 star systems. How do we protect them? Admiral Frank Hayes, Chief of Human Space Command, spread a holographic map across the table. Red dots marked human settlements throughout the galaxy. The situation is complicated, he said. Most of our colonies are surrounded by council member worlds. If they decide to retaliate, our people could be trapped. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, head of the Xenological Research Institute, spoke up. We have 3,000 human scientists working on joint projects with alien species. They've spent years building relationships and conducting research. Some of them won't want to come home. President Brooks nodded grimly. I understand the challenges. But before we make any decisions, I want to hear what Admiral Hayes has learned about the Council's activities. Admiral Hayes activated a secure data feed. For the past 5 years, my intelligence teams have been monitoring Council communications. We've suspected something was wrong, but we couldn't prove it until now. The room fell silent as Hayes presented his evidence. The Council had been systematically working against human interests for decades. They had blocked human trade proposals, delayed approval for new colonies, and excluded human scientists from major research projects. The worst part, Hayes continued, is their military planning. They've been positioning their fleets to surround human space. If we had stayed in the Council, they could have cut off our supply lines and forced us to surrender without firing a shot. Senator Turner looked shocked. Are you saying they were planning to attack us? Not attack, Hayes replied. Something worse. They were planning to slowly strangle us, reduce our territory bit by bit, force our colonies to become dependent on Council support. Eventually, they would have turned us into a client species with no real independence. President Brooks felt anger building in her chest. How long have you known about this? We've had pieces of information for years, Hayes admitted. But we never had enough evidence to act. The Council was very careful to hide their plans. It wasn't until Ambassador Morrison's team cracked their communication network that we got the full picture. Dr. Rodriguez shook her head. This is devastating. Some of our best scientists are working on projects that could benefit all of humanity. The research on quantum biology alone could revolutionize medicine. The research will continue, President Brooks said firmly. But it will continue under human control, not Council oversight. She stood up and walked to the holographic display. Senator Turner, I need you to coordinate the largest evacuation in human history. Every human citizen in Council space needs to be brought home safely. Turner looked overwhelmed. Madam President, that's over 3 million people. The logistics alone will take months. Then we better start immediately, Brooks replied. Admiral Hayes, I want every available transport ship pressed into service. Commercial vessels, military transports, even private yachts, whatever it takes. Hayes nodded. I'll begin organizing the fleet movements immediately. But what about the humans who don't want to leave? Some of them have built lives in Council space. They have alien friends, business partners, even family members from mixed marriages. President Brooks paused. This was the hardest part of the decision. We can't force anyone to come home, but we need to make sure they understand the risks. The Council might use them as hostages or bargaining chips. Dr. Rodriguez raised her hand. What about the research data? We have decades of joint scientific work stored in Council databases. If we lose access to that information, it could set back human science by generations. We'll take whatever we can, Brooks said. But we have to accept that some knowledge will be lost. The price of freedom is never cheap. The room was quiet for a moment as everyone absorbed the magnitude of what they were discussing. They were not just ending a political relationship. They were cutting humanity off from the greatest repository of knowledge and technology in the galaxy. Senator Turner broke the silence. Madam President, I need to ask the obvious question. Can we survive on our own? Human space is rich in resources, but we've become dependent on Council trade networks. Our technology is good, but not as advanced as some council members. Admiral Hayes smiled grimly. Senator, you might be surprised. Our intelligence suggests that human technology is more advanced than the council wants us to believe. They've been deliberately holding us back. He activated another display showing comparative technology assessments. Human engines are more efficient than most council designs. Our weapons are more accurate. Our computer systems are faster. The council has been feeding us outdated specifications to keep us dependent. President Brooks felt a spark of hope. Are you saying we might actually be better off without them? I'm saying we have a fighting chance, Hayes replied. Human innovation has always been our strength. When we're not held back by council bureaucracy, we can accomplish amazing things. Dr. Rodriguez nodded enthusiastically. He's right. Some of our best discoveries have come from independent research. The quantum drive technology we developed last year is already superior to anything the council uses. President Brooks made her decision. Then we move forward with the evacuation. Senator Turner, I want you to coordinate with every human colony. Give them the full situation report and let them make their own choices. Those who want to come home will be brought home safely. Those who choose to stay will have our support as long as possible. Turner nodded. I'll begin immediately. But, Madam President, we need to prepare for the possibility that the council might not let our people leave peacefully. That's why Admiral Hayes will be providing military escort for every transport, Brooks said. If the council wants to stop us, they'll have to fight for it. Hayes grinned. It would be my pleasure, Madam President. President Brooks looked around the room at her advisors. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to find out what humanity is really capable of. For the first time in over a century, we'll be completely independent. No council oversight, no bureaucratic delays, no hidden agendas. She paused, letting her words sink in. We're going to show the galaxy that humans don't need anyone's permission to be great. The meeting continued for hours as they planned the massive operation. Ships were reassigned, communication networks were established, and emergency protocols were activated. By dawn, the largest evacuation in human history was underway. President Brooks stood at her office window, watching the sunrise over Lake Geneva. In a few hours, the first transport ships would begin leaving council space. There was no going back now. She thought about Ambassador Morrison, probably still traveling back to Earth after his dramatic confrontation with the council. He had taken an enormous risk by cutting ties so suddenly. But maybe it was time for humanity to take risks again. The council had spent decades trying to control human ambition. Now they were about to discover what happened when humanity was finally free to pursue its own destiny. Helen. Brooks smiled as she watched the sunrise. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would be leading that change. Commander Lisa Park stood on the bridge of the defense station orbiting New Mars. Through the viewing window, she could see the massive construction project taking shape in space. Hundreds of worker ships moved like busy insects, assembling the largest defense platform humans had ever built. It had been 18 months since humanity left the Galactic Council. 18 months of hard work, innovation, and surprising discoveries. The galaxy had expected humans to collapse without council support. Instead, they were thriving. Commander, her assistant called out, we're receiving the weekly report from Engineer Miller's team. Lisa walked to the communication console. Tony Miller's face appeared on the screen, grinning widely. His hair was messy and his clothes were wrinkled, but his eyes sparkled with excitement. Lisa, you're not going to believe this, Tony said. We've done it. The new drive system is working perfectly. Our test ship just completed a journey to the Alpha Centauri system in half the time it would take a council ship. Lisa felt her heart skip. Half the time? Are you sure? Completely sure, Tony replied. We've run the test 12 times. Our new quantum drive is not just faster than council technology. It's twice as fast and uses 60% less energy. We can reach star systems that the council considers impossible to travel to, Lisa smiled. This was exactly what humanity needed. How soon can we start installing the drives on our ships? We're already building the first production models, Tony said. Within 6 months, every human ship will have the new drive system. We'll be able to explore parts of the galaxy that no one has ever seen before. The communication ended, and Lisa turned to look out at the construction project again. The defense platform was just one of dozens being built throughout human space. Each one was designed with human innovation and built with human determination. Her personal communicator buzzed. Commander Park, this is Dr. Walsh on New Terra. We've got some exciting news about the agricultural project. Lisa connected the call. Dr. Kevin Walsh appeared on her screen. He was standing in what looked like a massive greenhouse, surrounded by plants she didn't recognize. Kevin, those plants look amazing. Are they growing better than expected? Better than we ever imagined, Kevin replied. Remember how we used to import 70% of our food from Council worlds? Well, we don't need to anymore. These new crops produce 3 times more food per acre than anything we've grown before. Kevin walked through the greenhouse, showing her different plants. We've also developed new protein synthesis methods. We can now produce all the nutrition our colonies need without depending on anyone else. Lisa shook her head in amazement. How did we not discover this before? Because the Council never wanted us to, Kevin said. They provided us with seeds and growing instructions that were deliberately inefficient. They wanted us to stay dependent on their food exports. Now that we're doing our own research, we're finding solutions everywhere. After Kevin signed off, Lisa received another call. This one was from Captain Susan Clark, who was leading humanity's first independent exploration mission. Lisa, you need to hear this, Susan said. Her voice was filled with excitement. We've made contact with 3 new species in the Outer Rim. None of them have ever heard of the Galactic Council. Are they friendly? Lisa asked. More than friendly, Susan replied. They're eager to trade with us. And Lisa, they're fascinated by human technology. They think our innovations are incredible. Susan activated a secondary screen showing alien beings with blue skin and large eyes. This is Ambassador Kethelin from the Zarathi Republic. He wants to establish formal trade relations with humanity. The alien spoke in heavily accented English. Commander Park, we are honored to meet the humans. Your Captain Clark has shown us technology that seems like magic to us. We offer rare minerals and energy crystals in exchange for your knowledge. Lisa felt a thrill of pride. We welcome the opportunity to trade, Ambassador. Humanity believes in fair and equal partnerships. After the call ended, Lisa sat in her command chair and thought about how much had changed. When they first left the Council, everyone had been worried about survival. Now they were discovering that humanity had been held back for decades. Her tactical officer approached with a datapad. Commander, we're receiving intelligence reports from our border patrols. Council ships have been spotted near the edge of human space. They appear to be conducting surveillance. Lisa frowned. How many ships? Small scout vessels mostly. But they're definitely watching us? Some of our colonies have reported Council diplomats asking questions about human activities. Lisa stood up and walked to the tactical display. It showed the current positions of all human and Council ships in the border region. The Council ships were maintaining a careful distance, but they were clearly monitoring human activities. They're nervous, Lisa realized. They're starting to understand that we're not collapsing like they expected. Her communications officer called out, Commander, we're receiving a priority message from Earth. President Brooks wants to speak with all senior commanders. Lisa activated the secure channel. President Brooks appeared on the main screen, looking confident and determined. Commanders, I want to update you on our progress, Brooks began. 18 months ago, we were afraid that leaving the Council would destroy us. Today, I can report that humanity is stronger than ever. She activated a display showing economic data. Our industrial output has increased by 40%. Our scientific research has advanced faster than ever before. Our population is growing as humans from across the galaxy choose to return to human space. The President paused, letting the good news sink in. But I also want to warn you about increasing Council surveillance. They're watching our progress, and they're not happy about what they're seeing, Lisa spoke up. Madame President, what should we do if they try to interfere with our operations? We defend ourselves, Brooks replied firmly. We've given them no reason to attack us. We're not threatening anyone. We're simply building our own civilization in our own space. But if they choose to attack, we'll be ready. The president's expression softened slightly. I want you all to know how proud I am of what we've accomplished. Every human colony is now self-sufficient. Every human ship is powered by our own technology. Every human citizen can hold their head high knowing they're part of something special. After the call ended, Lisa returned to watching the construction project outside. The defense platform was nearly complete, its weapon systems and shield generators ready to protect human space from any threat. She thought about the 3 new species that Captain Clark had contacted. They were impressed by human technology and eager to learn from human innovation. The Council had always claimed that humanity wasn't ready for independent contact with new species. But these aliens seemed to think humans were amazing, alert, chimed on her console. Commander, we're detecting a Council diplomatic vessel approaching the border. They're requesting permission to enter human space. Lisa smiled grimly. Denied. Inform them that the Council ended diplomatic relations with humanity. They're not welcome in our space. The Council ship lingered at the border for several minutes, then slowly turned away. Lisa watched it go, knowing that this wouldn't be the last time they tried to make contact. The Council was starting to realize that humanity's departure had been a mistake. They had lost their most innovative and productive member species. Meanwhile, humanity was proving that they didn't need the Council at all. In fact, they were better off without them. Lisa looked out at the stars, thinking about all the possibilities that lay ahead. Humanity was free to explore, to innovate, to build relationships with species that valued their contributions. The galaxy was vast, and humans were just beginning to discover their place in it. The Council had tried to control human ambition for over a century. Now they were about to learn what happened when humanity was finally free to reach for the stars. General Mike Thompson stood in the command center of the human military base on Titan Station. The massive screens around him showed the positions of enemy ships approaching the border of human space. Red dots moved steadily toward the green, markers that represented human colonies. Sir, we count 230 Council ships in the main fleet, reported his intelligence officer. They're led by Admiral Carden of the Galactic Fleet Command. Mike studied the tactical display. The Council had finally decided to act. For months, they had been watching human progress with growing alarm. Now they were coming to force humanity back into submission. What's their estimated time of arrival at New Athens? Mike asked. 14 hours, sir. The colony defense force has only 12 ships? They're badly outnumbered. Mike activated his communicator. All units, this is General Thompson. Operation Shield Wall is now active. Proceed to your assigned positions immediately. Across human space, military ships began moving toward the border. The Council believed they were facing the same weak human forces they had dealt with for decades. They were about to learn how wrong they were. At New Athens colony, Captain Danny Brooks watched the approaching Council fleet through his ship's sensors. His small defense force was all that stood between the colony and the massive enemy fleet. Behind him, transport ships were evacuating civilians from the planet's surface. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Council fleet, his communications officer reported. Put it through, Danny ordered. Admiral Carden's face appeared on the screen. The alien looked like a cross between a shark and a snake, with gray skin and cold black eyes. Human Captain, I am Admiral Carden of the Galactic Council Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare for occupation. Danny kept his expression calm. Admiral, you are in violation of human territorial space. You have no authority here. Carden's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Authority? Human, your species abandoned the Council and all its protections. You are now rebels operating outside galactic law. We are here to restore order. What you're here to do is start a war, Danny replied. I suggest you turn around and go home. The alien admiral laughed. With 12 ships against my fleet? You are either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both, Danny said, but I'm not alone. As if on cue, new ships began appearing on the sensors. Human vessels dropped out of hyperspace, all around the Council fleet. Fast attack ships, heavy cruisers, and destroyers materialized in perfect formation. General Thompson's voice came over the communication channel. Admiral Cotton, this is General Mike Thompson, Commander of Human Defense Forces. You are surrounded and outnumbered. I suggest you withdraw immediately. Cotton stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Where there had been 12 human ships, there were now over 300. The humans had somehow assembled a massive fleet without the Council detecting it. Impossible, Cotton muttered. Our intelligence showed minimal human military presence. Your intelligence was wrong, Thompson replied. We've been preparing for this day since we left the Council. Did you really think we would leave ourselves defenseless? The Council Admiral's confidence began to crack. Even if you have more ships, human technology is inferior to ours. We have weapons and shields your species cannot match. Let's test that theory, Thompson said coldly. The battle began with the Council fleet firing first. Bright energy beams lanced out toward the human ships. But instead of destroying them, the weapons seemed to bounce off invisible barriers. Sir, their shields are holding, reported Cotton's tactical officer. Our weapons are having no effect. Danny Brooks grinned as he watched the enemy weapons fail. New shield technology, Admiral? Something we developed after leaving the Council. Your turn. The human ships returned fire. Their weapons cut through the Council shields like paper, destroying 2 enemy vessels in the first volley. The Council fleet scattered in confusion. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Cotton ordered frantically. Reform battle lines. But the human ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything the Council had ever seen. They darted between the larger Council vessels, striking with precision and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Meanwhile, on the planet Nexus, Prime, Counselor Vexthal sat in an emergency session watching the battle reports. The moderate counselor had opposed the military action from the beginning. This is madness, Vexthal said to his colleagues. We underestimated human capabilities completely. They're not the weak species we thought they were. Counselor Zethkar, who had pushed for the attack, watched the screens in growing horror. How did they build such a fleet so quickly? Where did they get this technology? Perhaps they always had it, Vexthal suggested. Perhaps we were the ones who were being deceived. Back at the battle, Admiral Cotton realized his fleet was being destroyed. Half his ships were already gone and the humans showed no signs of slowing down. General Thompson, he called desperately, I request a ceasefire to discuss terms. The terms are simple, Thompson replied. Withdraw from human space immediately. Any Council ship that remains will be destroyed. Cotton looked around at his remaining ships. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely outmatched. All ships begin immediate withdrawal. As the Council fleet retreated, Jake Morrison sat in his new office on Earth. The former ambassador was now serving as humanity's liaison to the non-Council species. His desk was covered with trade agreements and alliance proposals from dozens of alien governments. Ambassador Morrison, his assistant called out. We're receiving urgent communications from 17 different species. They all want to know if humanity is accepting new alliance members. Jake smiled. Tell them we're always interested in talking to friends. Schedule meetings with all of them. The victory at New Athens had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Species that had been under Council control for centuries were suddenly asking themselves why they needed the Council's protection. If humans could defend themselves so effectively, maybe others could too. Jake's communicator buzzed. Sir, we're receiving a priority message from the Zarathi Republic. They're requesting immediate military assistance. Military assistance? Jake asked. Against who? The Council, sir. They're threatening to invade Zarathi space for trading with humans. Jake felt a surge of anger. The Council was now threatening other species for the crime of befriending humanity. Tell the Zarathi that human ships are already on their way. Within hours, human fleets were moving toward 3 different star systems where the Council was, threatening non-member species. Each time the Council forces withdrew rather than face human ships in battle, General Thompson stood in his command center, watching the tactical displays. Human ships were now patrolling a region of space larger than the Council's own territory. Species that had never been part of the Council were asking for human protection. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from 2 Council member species. They want to leave the Council and join our alliance." Thompson nodded grimly. "Accept their requests. But make sure they understand that joining us means accepting our principles. No oppression, no exploitation, no forced membership." The Council's military defeat was complete. Their fleet had been humiliated by a species they had considered inferior. But worse than the military loss was the political damage. The Council's authority was crumbling as member species began to question why they needed Council protection on Nexus Prime. Councillor Vexville watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. 12 species had formally requested to leave the Council. Dozens more were demanding reforms and greater autonomy. "Perhaps," Vexville said quietly to his remaining colleagues, "we should consider that the humans were right. Perhaps it is time for a new way of doing things." But it was too late for compromise. The old order was collapsing and a new one was being born. Humanity had proven that independence was possible, that innovation was more powerful than tradition, and that freedom was worth fighting for. The galaxy would never be the same. President Helen Brooks stood on the balcony of the Terra Nova Conference Center, looking out over the vast gathering below. Representatives from 112 different species filled the ceremonial plaza. Flags and banners from dozens of worlds fluttered in the gentle breeze. It had been 3 years since humanity left the Galactic Council. 3 years since the galaxy had turned upside down. Today marked the first anniversary of the Treaty of Terra Nova, the document that had created a new kind of galactic civilization. "Madam President," her aide approached quietly, "the ceremony is about to begin. Ambassador Morrison is ready to deliver the opening address." Helen nodded and walked back inside. The main conference hall was packed with delegates, journalists, and observers. At the center of the room stood Jake Morrison, the man whose bold decision had started it all. Jake looked out at the assembled crowd. 3 years ago, he had been a frustrated diplomat watching the Council ignore human proposals. Now he was the chief architect of a new galactic order. "Friends and allies," Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. 3 years ago, humanity made a difficult choice. We chose freedom over security, independence over comfort, and principle over convenience. The audience listened intently. Many of the species represented had made similar choices in the months following humanity's departure from the Council. Today, we celebrate not just the anniversary of our alliance, but the birth of a new way of living together in the galaxy. The Treaty of Terra Nova established simple principles that every species can understand and follow. Jake activated a holographic display showing the treaty's main points: voluntary membership, equal representation, mutual respect, protection of the weak, freedom to choose your own path. In the back of the hall, Dr. Sarah Kim watched the ceremony with satisfaction. As head of the Humanitarian Relief Organization, she had spent the past year helping species transition away from Council control. The work had been challenging but rewarding. "Dr. Kim," her assistant whispered, "the Altarian delegation wants to thank you personally for the medical supplies we provided during their independence struggle." Sarah smiled. The Altarians had been one of the first species to break away from the Council after seeing humanity's success. Their transition had been difficult, but they were now thriving as independent members of the new alliance. Jake continued his speech. The old Council believed that some species were meant to rule and others were meant to follow. We believe that every species has something valuable to contribute to galactic civilization. Admiral Frank Hayes sat with the military delegation, thinking about how much had changed. The human defense forces had grown into the Galactic Defense Alliance, protecting dozens of worlds from threats both internal and external. But unlike the old Council's military, the new Alliance forces were volunteers, not conscripts. "Admiral," his aide whispered, "we're receiving reports from the Outer Rim. The exploration fleet has made contact with 3 more species who want to join the Alliance." Hayes nodded. The galaxy seemed to be full of species who had been waiting for an alternative to the Council's authoritarian rule. Every month brought new applications for membership. At the podium, Jake was nearing the end of his speech. The old Galactic Council still exists, of course, but it now represents fewer than 20 species, down from the 67 members it had 3 years ago. Those species that remain are free to continue their old ways. We will not force anyone to join us. In the council chambers on Nexus Prime, Councillor Vextel watched the ceremony through a live broadcast. The once mighty council chamber was nearly empty now. Most of the seats belonged to species that had left for the Human Alliance. "Perhaps it is time to admit our mistakes," Vextel said to the few remaining councillors. "The humans have shown us a better way." Councillor Zethkar, one of the few hardliners left, shook his head angrily. "They have destroyed everything we built. Galactic civilization is falling apart." "No," Vextel replied quietly. "Galactic civilization is being reborn, and it's being reborn better than before." Back on Terra Nova, Jake introduced President Brooks to deliver the main address. Helen walked to the podium, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. 3 years ago," she began, "many people thought humanity had made a terrible mistake. They said we would collapse without the Council's support. They said we were too young, too reckless, too ambitious." She paused, looking out at the diverse crowd. "They were wrong about everything except our ambition. We are ambitious. We're ambitious enough to believe that freedom is better than control. We're ambitious enough to think that cooperation is stronger than domination." The audience erupted in applause. Species that had never worked together before were now close allies, bound together by shared principles rather than fear. Today, our alliance includes species from every corner of the galaxy. We have peaceful traders like the Zerathi, brilliant scientists like the Corvani, and proud warriors like the Thaxian clans. Each brings their own strengths to our common cause. Captain Susan Clark, now Admiral of Exploration Forces, smiled as she listened. Her ships had made contact with 47 new species in the past year alone. Almost all of them had chosen to join the Alliance rather than seek Council membership. President Brooks continued. "But our greatest achievement is not military or economic. It's the simple fact that we've proven democracy can work on a galactic scale. We've shown that species can govern themselves without being controlled by others." In the audience, Tony Miller sat with the other technology leaders. His quantum drive systems now powered ships throughout Alliance space. But more importantly, the technology was shared freely among all member species. No one was denied access to innovations that could improve their lives. "The old Council hoarded knowledge and technology," Brooks said. "They gave advanced species advantages while keeping younger species dependent. We share everything we learn because we believe that lifting up others makes us all stronger." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now head of the Alliance Scientific Council, nodded approvingly. Human research had accelerated dramatically when they started working with alien scientists as true equals rather than junior partners. Brooks moved toward her. Conclusion. Some ask what we've learned from our 3 years of independence. We've learned that diversity is strength. We've learned that freedom is contagious. We've learned that when you treat people with respect, they respond with loyalty and friendship. She gestured toward the viewing screens showing the ceremony to billions of beings across the galaxy. But most importantly, we've learned that the future belongs to those brave enough to build it themselves. The ceremony concluded with the traditional singing of the Alliance Anthem, a song written by a human composer but sung in dozens of languages. Simultaneously, as the voices rose together, President Brooks felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Outside the conference center, children from 20 different species played together in the gardens. Human children laughed alongside young Zerathi. Kovani, and dozens of other species. They spoke a mixture of languages and understood each other perfectly. Jake Morrison stood watching the children play. 3 years ago, he had made the hardest decision of his life. He had risked everything on the belief that humanity deserved better than the Council's broken promises. Looking at those children, he knew he had made the right choice. They were growing up in a galaxy where their potential would never be limited by someone else's fear. They would explore stars that previous generations could never reach. They would make discoveries that would benefit everyone. The old Galactic Council had tried to control the future. The new alliance was building it together, one friendship at a time. As the sun set over Terra Nova, ships from across the galaxy prepared to carry news of the ceremony home to their worlds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new species ready to join the growing alliance. But tonight, the galaxy celebrated the simple truth that humanity had proven 3 years ago. Freedom was always worth fighting for, and the future belonged to those brave enough to reach for the stars.